On the clock. I wonder if he's going to take Justin Fields.
Yeah, he might take Justin Fields. I feel like a lot of those guys been teasing him about. I haven't been able to look at his rankings or anything, but I think Gainwell is what is expected to happen for him at 1.
Oh, really? So, I thought he was. I thought he was higher on. Oh, my mind just went totally blank. Who's the
Etienne?
Hubbard. Hubbard.
He might be. I mean, Hubbard might be his pick. I don't know, but and he might just have Gainwell ranked higher than everybody else.
Yeah, he's got. Not to give away his secrets
right
too much, but it looks like he's got Hubbard and then Gainwell in the running back room. See, I'm higher on Etienne personally. But,
yeah, I've got Gainwell at where I'm picking. I'm picking 9. Nick, where you picking?
11.
11. So okay, so Mitch, you can hear us. I can't add you to the screen because I don't know why. But the only options it's given me is kick from studio and fan from studio. So I don't know why. I figured you could come in, but maybe the mic isn't good enough or something. I don't know. So, but if you just want to hang with us, that's cool too. So, and yeah, so you're 11.
I'm 11.
Mitch is 12.
Aha. So, interesting.
9. Yeah, we're gonna be all jammed up here, close range, ready to go. Kicking off in 15 seconds here, and away we go.
So yeah, this is going to be crazy fast, probably quicker than I anticipated when we discussed doing this, but it should be fun.
See, 45 seconds to me is a goddamn eternity. Because Justin Fields, number 1 pick to Bainbridge, because the Welsh and I do 30-second picks, and Chuba number 2 to Zach Hall, and if we do further than that, we cut it down to 20 or 15-second picks. If it's like a 16-man league, well, it's because I edit those, and it's like if I have an hour and a half to edit, it takes me 3 hours. It's pretty much double the time. So if we do Jarrett Patterson to Kevin Brown at 4 or at 3, excuse me. So Nate is up, Nate Marchesi, and then Joe, John Lobb, McKechnie, Justin Heisey, me, Josh, Nick, and then Mitch. So we're rolling here. Let's see. Nate is taking his time. So, I like that.
So what do you think Patterson as the second running back there? That's a little bit of a surprise to me.
I think it's the schedule. I think that's what it is because he scored more points per game than Etienne did last year. Not as much as Hubbard. Hubbard was almost 30 points a game at running back last year. But I think it's the easy schedule and the fact that he had 300 carries last year. I think that's what pushed him up. I'm
a little bit not
Rondell
worried.
Moore. Whoa, a lot of picks here. Sammy went to Joe. Joe's a dick. Gainwell went to Johnny, and then Spencer Rattler. And now I am up, and I am going to be taking Jamar Chase. So you guys know my strategy is to take wide receivers early in mocks and early in drafts. So Jamar Chase from LSU to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. If so, Josh is up now. If he doesn't take Rashad Bateman, that's who I'm going with on my list next. If it is, you went Sam Howell. So yeah, I'm going to go Rashad Bateman, receiver for me early on. We'll probably come back around. Not to spoil it too much. Mitch has the next 2 picks, but I'm probably thinking a wide receiver coming around in a couple of picks as well.
I know who I want next. Obviously, I'm not going to say who it is, but I know exactly who I want. So let's see. Then Bateman went, Devontae Smith. Mitch is up. I took, God damn it, Mitch took Najee Harris off my list.
All right. So I'm God, I got a decision here. So I'm going receiver, either Sage Surratt or Tutu Atwell. Atwell is probably one of my favorite players, but I think Surratt sets up just a tiny bit better. So I'm going to take Surratt.
Okay. Well, I want Borgie.
Ooh.
And I know this is high, and I know you don't like him, but I think.
Oh, I like him.
Well, you don't like him at this spot, though, do you?
It might be a little early for me.
Yeah.
I'm a little. I know we've talked about it in 4 or 5 different places, so I lose track. But I'm just fascinated with what is Nick Rolovich going to do, because Borgie could be Desimi St. Just from Hawaii in 2017, where he ran for 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns, caught the ball a little bit out of the backfield. You know, that he could be that guy. But Hawaii the last couple of years has been traditional run and shoot for the most part, and you know, running backs get it a little bit, but the quarterback runs almost as much. And you know, the running backs as a whole, I think, caught 6 passes last year. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just think that a lot like we talk about with Warren Jackson, Colorado State, they got to use that weapon that they have. And you know, I don't know if they will, but I hope they do. Obviously, I'm still in on him. The last couple picks after I went with Borgie, Tylan Wallace went to Heisey. Then McKechnie took Kobe Lewis, the running back out of Central Michigan. Trevor Lawrence went to John, not a surprise there, out of Clemson. He's been singing his praises. Joe DeSalvo took Marquez Stevenson out of Houston. I thought that was pretty high. And then George Pickens to Nate. And now Kevin Brown is on the clock. So a nice mix. I love seeing this. I love seeing where all of these experts are picking here.
Yeah, this is interesting. And Mitch in the chat said, I chose Sage Surratt. He said he was trying to decide between Surratt and Devontae Smith, went with Smith. But he also made the comment too early for Pickens, and I think I agree. Pickens is very, very talented. And, of course, we're hoping that the Georgia offense will take a big step forward. But one thing that makes me a little bit nervous, and I've seen some whispers, heard some whispers and some concerns elsewhere, but Pickens was pretty immature in some ways last year, ended up getting a couple of coaches' decisions, suspensions for a quarter here and there, and he got suspended or got kicked out of a game for fighting against Georgia Tech. And so there's a little bit of a concern. Like I'm afraid if I were to take Pickens this early, you're going to show up on a Saturday and have him in your lineup, and all of a sudden, unexpectedly, kickoff comes and we hear, oh, George Pickens is suspended today.
Right.
So hopefully, he doesn't. Hopefully, he gets things back on track, and that isn't an issue. But I'm a little bit afraid of that. That I'm spending an early round selection on a guy, and I'm going to show up, and he's not playing because he got himself in trouble.
There goes Asher O'Hara, who I kind of wanted. Then C.J. Johnson, Justin Henderson, John's picking then McKechnie, then Heisey, and then me. I feel like Heisey's going to take who I want one pick ahead of me. When Jamar Jefferson, Daz Newsome, Heisey's on the clock, and I want De'Aaron King pretty bad.
De'Aaron King's next on my queue. And so I was telling you before we started recording that there have been a couple of drafts I've done where I've basically punted quarterbacks because I think there's plenty of value in the later rounds, and I can stream quarterbacks from week to week. This year, I think there's certainly a chance of that. But I think if Josh doesn't take him here, I'm going to have to take the jump. I haven't drafted him yet, but I've been singing KJ Costello's praises all off season, and so I think picking a Mike Leach quarterback. He took Jamie Newman, so I'm going to take KJ Costello. I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. That's right.
That's right. You're big on him.
Well, I'm big on the system. I've said it a ton of times already, but he's the most talented quarterback Mike Leach has ever had. I'm confident in that system that he's shown he can get a guy coached up quickly, and Costello's a smart guy. He's going to be able to pick up the system quickly. I think he's going to be able to master it, and they're going to rep the same 6 plays 100 times a day for however long they get to practice, and it'll be pretty much up and running as expected, I think, by week 1 or 2, and we'll see how those receivers play out.
Terry went KJ Costello, Brock Purdy, Mitch is on the clock for a second one. He landed on DeMonte Coxey.
Ooh,
you are up again.
All right, probably my favorite player in college football. Might be a little high, but the Nebraska wide receiver, a little bit of running back, Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be my next pick. And then, unfortunately, with J.D. Spillman in the transfer portal for him, but that might help boost Wan'Dale's value a little bit as well.
It definitely could. I've got Mo Ibrahim on the queue, and that is who I'm taking because Diami Brown went 1 pick ahead of me. I was kind of fighting between him and a wideout here. I'm gonna see if my wideout falls back to me. I can't remember if I have a pick before you guys or not. I think I do, but I can't remember. So I'll keep my mouth shut on that one. But
you're back before us, I believe.
Yeah, I want okay. So I want Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I don't know if he's
the top of my queue at the moment.
Okay. So. Yeah. See, I have the right intuition there. Did Waddle already go?
I believe so.
Waddle's still on the board. Okay. Cue him up as well.
Justin went with Nakia Watson early in the 4th round.
I like that pick. It's ballsy. Because if he doesn't work out and they go with someone later, it's rough, but I like that pick.
Mitch says he likes St. Brown too early for Watson. I think I agree with that. Oh, and John, man, he loves Journey Brown.
There he goes. I was about to put him in my queue.
I mean, I get it. I get liking a player, and he's super fast. He was productive. He came on really strong at the end of last season. I just think Noah Cain's more talented, and it's not so much that I expect Noah Cain to be the number 1 running back. I just think he's so talented that you're not going to be able to keep him off the field. And he was banged up last year, which I think contributed to Brown's high production numbers. And so I think you have a healthy Cain. I'm worried that there's not going to be, running back number 1 type carries for Journey Brown.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. God, I can't take that guy. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just putting some guys in my queue here, so bear with me. Michelle Watson moving up boards, John says. Bainbridge says, no, he's not. Still can't decide on Watson, Nate says. Yeah, I think we're all like that because we know whoever gets that job is going to be unbelievably productive. It's just, Watson is most likely to get it, but he's definitely not guaranteed. So Jalen Waddle, there he goes. That was my backup to St. Brown. So I doubt St. Brown falls back to me. I'm just going to throw
Tyler Wallens.
Oh,
Tyler Bonds was first. See, that's also an interesting. Oh, back to back. Bonds and St. Brown.
Zach, don't be smart. Make bad picks. Come on, Javian Hawkins. All right. Well, I mean, I'll just take Adrian Martinez if he slips on down to me here.
Really, this early?
I've seen him in the early.
Well, I mean, I've just seen him. I mean, I think it's been a little while, so maybe this is skewed a bit, but in a decent mock with some of these same folks, I got him in like the 9th round. So hopefully he's moving up boards a little bit, but
too late, I think.
Well, I get it. I don't want to talk you out of it because you might, I might be tempted to draft him with my.
Well, actually, this is what I'll do. Yeah, you won't be. So I'm going to skip him here and see if he falls back to me. There goes Isaiah McCoy, Frank Darby, and Sir Roderick Thompson.
Oh, Thompson goes before Mike Bainbridge can get him.
I'm going to take Warren Jackson here. That's what I'll do. And then I'll see if Martinez falls back to me because there are a couple QBs that I like in this range here. Although my next one after Martinez is Ian Book, and I just don't think I could take Ian Book and watch him for that many games in a row.
Ian Book is, I mean, the receiver situation's got to work itself. Kennedy Brooks, that's the next thing. I really like that. I should have.
I had him in my queue.
He was third in my queue. He's moving up my list. I really like Kennedy Brooks and think that the opportunity for him to basically be a workhorse that we haven't really seen at Oklahoma in a little while.
There goes Helani. And that was to Josh. Now you're up.
So I'm not huge on Helani, but the top guy on my board, I'm pretty high on. I think I might be slightly higher on him than most, but Marshall running back Brendan Knox. Probably going to make a run on running backs here because I haven't taken a quarterback as high in most mocks, and I've got 3 receivers, so I'm probably going to take 3 or 4 running backs in a row here is my my thought. I've been doing that, and I'm not sure it's the smartest thing. Maybe others can disagree with me on that, but I've been drafting in chunks. I've done 3 of my first 4 picks being receivers because I'm later in the first round, and then usually I will let the quarterback sort of wait until later on. But this part of the draft, once my starting receivers are selected, I'll pick 3 or 4 or 5 even running backs and just kind of stock that position, then go back to receiver and then fill in quarterback and the rest.
I have a lot of turnover risk here because I have King, Borgie, Jamar Chase, and Warren Jackson. So I do have a lot of turnover risk, but I like this build so far. CFF, Sam Hartman, I like that pick, Mitch. And I like the Terrace Marshall pick too. But CFF is
Terrace Marshall, really like him. He's growing on me.
Way more Ricky Bobby than any other thing. Oh, so you took a guy in my queue. I like that. Elijah Mitchell out of ULL. I like that pick.
He was my top running back. Gotta build the queue up. I'm not sure if all these guys will make it to me, but Stevie Scott is next, who I think I'm higher on than most. So I'm putting him in there. Hawkins was already taken. Puka Williams, I'm not 100% sure what I think of yet, but he's next highest on my list. And then a couple of lower division guys, Gage Walker and CJ Maribel, who I think if they click could be top 20 guys, but a little bit risky in my opinion on both of them.
You see that? Did you see Nate? It said, "Damn it, Bogman!" Right after I took Adrian Martinez.
Oh, there you go.
See, I knew he wasn't gonna last that long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is interesting, man. It's Chris Olave, Spencer Sanders, Jared Smart to Johnny. I like that. I'm gonna see if I've got 2 guys in my queue. I think one is the least surprising Bogman pick maybe in the history of picks, and the other one is a little bit surprising. So we'll see if I get them both coming back here. I don't want to name names, but I mean, I'll just tell you the first one because I do believe once again I'm up before either one of you guys are. But my next one is Valladay. Least surprising pick. Yeah,
I like Valladay for sure.
Ooh, Tyler Snead in the 6th round. I like it, Kevin. And Dustin Crum up here too. So Crum has been getting this springboard recently, hasn't he, Nick?
I think so. I mean, he's definitely getting some buzz. I don't quite know if I believe it yet. I mean, he was productive and he was exciting during the bowl game, but I'm always a little bit nervous. I'll say this every once in a while. I don't know that I love if a guy just comes out of nowhere, and Dustin Crum definitely came out of nowhere. So I don't know if I believe it quite yet. And, he plays Alabama this year. The early schedules is not great. I know you're, back half of the season, you're playing a max schedule and there's a lot to like about that, but I don't know. I'm a little weary of Dustin Crum personally.
Aha. See, Nate said, I debated Martinez in round 4. Bounce back is happening.
I think so. I screwed up. Xavier Baladay is my 14th running back right after Kennedy Brooks and before Elijah Mitchell, who I drafted. So the 45 seconds, the 45 seconds is screwing me up a little bit, and perhaps got you a value pick there on Baladay.
Well, we'll see if I even get him. So, because there's like 7 or 8 picks still. Demetric Felton went. Your boy Shakir, there he goes.
Yeah.
Not going to get him. Keelan Stokes. These are good picks here.
Yeah,
it's hard to debate a lot of these picks. These are good picks here. Mike
with Shakir and Felton there are a bit of a surprise. Tight end is interesting. We've seen a couple of tight ends already. Joe DeSalvo got Brant Keith from Utah, and then we just saw Granson from SMU. Nate just got Xavier Baladay. Oh man, who's up next for you?
Yeah. Kyle Pitts, actually, now that we're talking about tight ends. That was the one who I said is surprisingly on my board, because I usually don't reach for tight ends barely ever. Mm-hmm. But I do like Kyle Pitts. I mean, we're in round 7. And there is a clear, there's a shelf of tight ends. It's like 9 deep. And then after that, you're kind of throwing darts. I mean, not really, but there's a bunch of guys that are just okay. So I'm going to take Kyle Pitts here. And now my lineup is King, Martinez, Borghi, Ibrahim, Chase, Jackson, and Pitts. I really like that.
All right. So
David Bell went after me, and Nick is up.
Yeah, and I kind of wish I hadn't put myself in a corner and said I was going to go with a bunch of running backs, because
you don't have to.
Well, I don't have to, but I do like to stick with the strategy. I do think Stevie Scott is a little bit underrated. I'm not sure why I don't know why I'm higher on him the most, but Mitch brought up a great point that John actually selected Jared Smart from Hawaii in the 7th round, and Mitch said that too early on Smart with Rico Busey in town. And you and I talked, Scott, recently about how I think Rico Busey he's better than Smart in my opinion. Smart's really unproven, but 2, he's just a bit.
You're up, by the way.
Just went with Puka Williams. Don't love him, but I feel like
second in my queue, by the way. Puka Williams, Ramon Davis, but this guy was first, and I'm taking Jarian Ely, the running back out of Ole Miss.
There you go. I like Ely a lot.
I like a Lane Kiffin running back. Sure. He really likes to. We saw Devin Singletary tear it up for him, so I'm really excited about Ely at Mississippi State or Mississippi this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like Ely a lot. I'm a little bit worried. I'm not sure why. I just realized he's a little bit slight of build, shall we say. But I thought for some reason I had him listed at over 200 pounds, but he's in the 180, maybe 190 range. That makes me a little bit worried, since they do have some bigger backs.
He looks pretty carved up, though.
He does. And he's very talented and was super explosive as a true freshman, showed some great things in the return game as well. So I think he's got an opportunity to do some really good things. But
there goes Rico.
Yeah, I was just about to say that Busey, you and I talked about, might be, I think, at least at the G5 level, maybe the most impactful graduate transfer, immediate eligible type guy.
So David Bailey, I just queued him up, and Zach took him. Joseph Nagata to Kevin Brown. I like that pick. I feel like Justin might have talked people out of Nagata, but I still kind of like him. Garrett Wilson to Nick Chagrin goes to Bainbridge in the 8th round here. Yeah. I have, man, I kind of want to take another whiteout, but I've got Verdell at the top of my queue, and he's been there.
Just added him to mine.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go with Verdell as my next. That'd be my first bench pick, but I still have one wide receiver to fill out. I obviously need a backup quarterback still with King and Martinez. I especially need a backup quarterback with King and Martinez. So I should probably look there pretty soon as well. So, but Verdell, top of my queue. So that's who I'm going to go with. And then I'm going to look and see. I don't even know if these guys are gone, but they would be after. So I'm going to keep quiet on. There goes Cyrus Mitchell. I love that pick.
I like that too. Pretty much the only proven commodity in that Mississippi State receiving core. Rambo, I think, is great value in the 9th round. I think that, somebody's got to catch passes in the Oklahoma offense, and Rambo, I think, has a pretty, pretty good inside track, shall we say, to be the number 1 guy. And there's a little bit of a discussion in the chat in the draft room saying, Weiss, I think actually went higher. I don't buy into that. I think Rambo's relatively clear entering as number 1 at this point.
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys can be successful. I've been like Obi Obialo as well. So Heisey's up. Don't take Verdell Heisey. He took or no, he hasn't picked yet. Amari Rogers went 1 pick ahead of him. It looks like he might have got flustered by that pick, or his internet went out because he's ticking it down all the way to the end. We did see Tim Jones. That's a good pick. We did see, I think Joe took the Georgia defense. He did, before we fired up here, he was lamenting the quick clock. So that might be something that he is just not ready for.
Ooh, and I am so I've been, you mentioned like, it's your first bench pick, and I already have a running back on the bench, and I'm going to go running back again. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because I do still have some starting spots open: quarterback, tight end, defense, kicker, of course. Ooh. But what are your thoughts? Because now I've drafted 4 running backs in a row. All Puka Williams is technically, I guess, Power 5, but the other 3 are G5 guys. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because as you know, I'm still a little bit
just stacking running backs. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, I like stacking, especially if, like, the reason I took Verdell here. You're up again, by the way.
I am, and I'm going to take a guy that's been undrafted in a lot of rounds, so I could let him fall, but we're gonna move him up in the ADP a little bit because he was a top 25 receiver.
Kalen Geiger, Caleb Huntley.
Kalen Geiger out of Troy. I bumped him down to 32 because he just hasn't been drafted, but I think he's the best receiver in the Sun Belt. So I wanted to give him a little bit of bump in, ADP or visibility at least.
Yeah, and what I was saying about your running backs is, especially if the other positions, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, are a little more mixed. You've talked about just the tremendous depth at quarterback this year, so you're not worried about it getting him back up. Neither am I. But if you're good at those other spots, or you just, even if you're not good at them, but the ADP shifts for some of the guys that you like versus some of the guys that are going to get picked high, I think it doesn't really matter as long as you're not taking like 4 quarterbacks straight at the top. Yeah. That's not something I would do with my first 6 picks, but I think at any point in the draft, that's why I'm not a big fan of overall lists. I make the overall list, but I lament them and hate them. God damn it. Sorry. John took Jaden Blue was my next pick. There goes Trask and TJ McDaniel as well.
Wow, Trask.
Yeah, dude. We talked about Trask today, and we talked about how those 3 running backs are just, they're going to get mixed in, but he's got a great receiving core. So, yeah. I mean, I think I don't hate that as much as you do.
I don't love it. I mean, Trask is, let's see, what are we? I can't even find him. 57th on quarterbacks on my list, and I'm certainly capable of.
I mean, I don't have him high, but he's 44th. He's 44th on mine, so not nearly as low as you, but not high either. So, am I up next between all of us?
Yes.
Okay, Mikael Honey. All right, I want Chris Reynolds. I put Chris Reynolds in my queue. I think you guys are going to take him where I took Pimpleton last time, and I wanted Jaden Blue to fall back to me to go back-to-back wideouts there. but I'm going to take Chris Reynolds here. And Miles Brennan was my backup, and I only have 2 guys in my queue, so I need to start figuring this out here. Let's put this guy in the queue as well. But that's my plan right now is plumbing. So do you like the way you look at your team? There goes Goodson from Iowa, the running back. Then Sincere McCormick from UTSA to Zach Hall. That's a good pick too. Do you like the way you built your team so far?
So far, I feel like I have a couple of receivers in my queue, but I think that basically I can wait almost until the end for them. So I think there's going to be receivers available. So I'm getting ready to make a quarterback run. I've got a top 25 quarterback. Actually, I think I have a couple of top 25 quarterbacks still. Yep, still on my list available, and then a couple of guys that have not been drafted in most of the mocks that I've done already, but I think are in line for some really big years. So I'm probably going to draft 2 or 3 quarterbacks here in a row, and then fill out the rest of my roster.
Let's see, Victor Tucker, then Oregon defense to McKechnie, Mac Jones to Joe DeSalvo. Heisey's on the clock, and then I'm taking Chris Reynolds. He took Galloway. I like that pick. He was really good in the Natties, suspended the rest of the year at tight end for Clemson. It's a little homer pick for Justin, but I'm okay with it. So I took Chris Reynolds. Josh is up, and then you're up for, I guess, one of 2 quarterbacks here, right?
Yeah, the top on my list is Zach Thomas. It was Mac Jones, but he went a couple of picks. Ooh, Donovan Green, I like that pick. I'm going to go with Zach Thomas. I think for some reason we're sleeping on him a little bit. Appalachian State quarterback. He's 24th in my quarterback list, 1 spot ahead of Dustin Crum, who, I guess I'm lower on than most. But Thomas, according to my numbers, has been more productive, shall we say. And I am a little bit flustered because I made a mistake.
You see who Mitch took?
Took Bonner there. Oh, and Jake Smith.
Yeah, how dare you, Mitch? I was next in my queue, but I'm going to go with, you just took. Oh, okay. Tell me about Grant Gunnell.
All right,
Grant Gunnell, QB from U of A. I like that pick, but tell me about it.
So I got myself flustered. I'm going to do it if it gets back to me. Mitch has got back-to-back picks in between here, so I'm gonna spoil. Ooh, Sky Moore, nice. I like that.
Thank
from you. But I got flustered and I didn't set it up in time. But I'm drafting at a position 11th out of 12 total teams where I would feel comfortable doing back-to-back Washington State quarterbacks. And I was going to go with Cooper, and then I was going to go with DeLora. DeLora is the true freshman coming in who I actually think has probably a better than 1/3 shot of actually winning the job. So I really kind of wanted to do those. I'm going to pick one of those if they're still available when it comes back around to me, but got a little bit flustered, and I do want to highlight Grant Gunnell because I think he really has an opportunity to have a big year. He's stepping into the job full-time. Khalil Tate, of course, was the starter for the most part at Arizona the last few years, was banged up a little bit, was ineffective at times. Gunnell came in. He's really well regarded from the evaluators at PFF, things like that. The system, I think, fits him a little bit better than it did. Khalil Tate is actually, Kevin Sumlin and Neil Mazzoni, they want to throw the football around a lot. Gunnell's going to have an opportunity, I think, to do that. Needs a couple of receivers to step up, but I think he's in line. He could throw for 4,000 yards. I think that's certainly possible. Arizona defensively, not great, has an opportunity to play a lot of shootouts. So I think they'll be throwing quite a bit. I think Gunnell is in line for a solid first full year as a starter. Finally,
John Emery goes to John. Not surprised. I think that's a solid pick. It's a nice risk where we are here. Man, so am I up next between all of us here?
We're gonna have to sit and evaluate this if we're done in 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. I'm surprised this has gone so fast because I do a 12-man mock, and it takes an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised this has gone pretty quick. I guess just when you invite all the people who have made their own lists, that's probably why it's just gone so super fast.
Quentin Morris, Bowling Green. I think that's a really nice pick from Mike. We chatted a little bit the other day, went back and forth on some of our rankings, and I think that's a pick that's moving up a lot of people's boards because Quentin Morris is a wide receiver that plays tight end at Bowling Green. That's part of the reason why I'm so high on Kyle Pitts. I want the most athletic guy in that tight end spot. So he's somebody that I think fits that mold, and it's a little scary, maybe Bowling Green to put your faith in a team that was really, really, really bad. But that certainly has an opportunity to make for productive.
Somebody's got to catch the ball, right? I mean,
that's right.
I know that's a crutch argument, but it's also sometimes a true argument. Somebody does have to catch the ball. So my next pick is going to be Deshaun Corbin. So that's the running back that transferred from A&M to Florida State. Look, oh wow, Joe took Tyrell Shavers. I mean that could be a good pick. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Man, look at these snaps. God damn, I'm not going to get any Texas player. Thank you, McKechnie, for taking Eagles on me. And then Heisey's up, and then I'm going to take Deshaun Corbin here. Unless he's like one of the very few people watching us and he takes Corbin one spot ahead of me just for S's and giggles here. Let's see. It's got to make a pick, Heisey.
From Mitch in the comments, he said he has Trask at 42, and then he took Logan Bonner with his last pick and wants to take Layton Hatcher, similar to what I was talking about with Washington State quarterbacks. Yeah. And I personally, I put this out a couple of times. I think that Hatcher is better than Bonner. And I know that there have been some comments, including head coach Blake Anderson, who seems to be setting the stage to say, Bonner shouldn't lose his job because he got hurt. So he's going to enter, spring or fall rather with the inside track to get that job back. But personally, I think Hatcher is better. All right. How are we doing? Washington State. Cameron Cooper, that's the guy who's number one.
The Dokes went in Europe now.
All right, I get these guys confused. Cooper, yes, taking him. If Delara sticks around, he will be my next pick.
Gotcha.
Cooper, do it. Got it.
There it is. Ooh. I was like, "Are you sure?"
Well, I put him in my queue instead of picking him on accident.
And Wesley Kennedy. To Mitch, I like that pick, and Joshua Mack from Liberty. Love those picks. Let's see. Let's look at Mitch's team real quick here. Let's see. Purdy, Hartman, Najee Harris, Ronnie Rivers, Devontae Smith, DeMonte Coxey, Terrace Marshall, Rakeem Boyd on the bench, Book, Nixon, Jake Smith, Logan Bonner, Wesley Kennedy, and Josh.
Laura's already taken. Did Bainbridge take?
Say again?
I'm just thinking out loud. All right, I'm going with Josh Amorta Bebe.
Are these guys really going to take my kicker too? They're going to take Dicker? Come on. Maybe I should just take him here to screw all of them. Kicker and defense, I do not care about even a little bit. I know I'll take him because we have to, but this is my last pick. Oh, did Imitor really go? You took Imitor. God.
Yeah.
All right.
That's one we haven't talked about yet. We'll talk about that after. I think he's being slept on.
Yeah, I do too. I honestly, he was going to be my next guy. I went with my last bench spot. I took John Reese Plumlee from Ole Miss, the running quarterback. He is not guaranteed to have the job, but I like taking the gamble here.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I would like to have a discussion on John Reese Plumlee as well.
Let's see. Yeah, so my last two picks are kicker and defense here. So Marshawn Lloyd, Charlie Brewer, Let's see, James Mitchell from Va Tech, and then Joshua Mack before that. Yeah, I like. So maybe it's just a product of ranking 1,000 players over the weekend, but I feel like I wish this was deeper a little bit. I really like my team, but I feel like if we sit here and go through all the teams, I'm probably going to like all of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, and maybe it's just because I'm immersed in this all the time, but this year seems particularly deep. And of course, not everybody is going to hit, but I think there's value, in a lot of these deeper positions. I think there are systems that we can lean on that have new faces coming in that you're going to get some value. I think that there's just guys that have proven it, that are in the 30s and 40s in my running backs list and quarterbacks list. And I feel like there's a lot of value, and it's going to, depend a lot on matchups. I definitely feel that, I don't know, people are going to win, and this is probably always the case, but people are going to win their leagues in 16th, 17th, 18th round with some of these lower level guys that we don't necessarily expect a whole lot of, but that really develop into stars. I don't know.
Or in just ads. And you know what? I didn't even realize that this whole stupid time that thing never updated. I can't believe I left it up there the whole time. I was really looking at this screen, and it didn't update the whole time. So
I should have mentioned something. My bad.
Yeah, well, I
noticed it once or twice, but it was probably when I was on the clock and got flustered. Omar Manning again. That's a name that pick. You're going to see especially more and more, especially now that Spillman is gone, for sure.
Is he Omar Manning is a freshman this year, right?
He's a junior college transfer.
Oh,
so he's okay. So he's developed. He's ready to go. He was he was up towards the top of the list as far as 247 ratings of junior college players. I mean, he's a top 2 or 3 type talent. So he's somebody that's going to step in and potentially have a big role in that offense, especially with J.D. Spillman not.
You see Pigram go?
That's an intriguing pick, Pigram, because he transferred. He's Western Kentucky, right? Which I don't love the system. I mean, last year they just sort of fed Gage Walker and played good defense, and Pigram has a skill set. Ladson here, I think, is good value.
Right, and I feel like that's a trolley pick from the catch name because he's right in front of Heisey, who's a Clemson fan.
That's funny.
So I think the catch is a Georgia fan, if I'm not mixing that up wrong.
I think that's right. But Pigram's interesting. He's got a skill set. He's a more well-rounded player than Ty Story was last year at WKU, but he's been hurt so much, and we just haven't seen very much of him recently. So it's definitely high upside, but he's not super high on my list, at least at this point.
I took the Texas defense, so Josh takes Miami because he is a Miami fan. Nick, you're up.
I am.
George is way gone. So,
all right, let's see here.
I mean, you stream defense, you stream kickers every single week. So I'm not. I'm doing this because I know John wants us to take defenses and kickers, but there's about 1,000 other guys I'd rather take and stash on my bench. But, you got 12 seconds. No panicking.
I stayed cool under pressure. I had to go grab
Weidermeyer. All right. I like that. Pat Freer. Wow. Pat Freiermuth going. Okay.
Oh, that's a total mistake on my part. Jeez.
Jesus, how did Freiermuth fall that far?
That's such a
Are there
mistake
2 in the system for sure? I mean, I don't know what's happening. That's crazy. That's crazy good value, Mitch. Jeez.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes me feel bad for taking Kyle Pitts now. Where I took him in the 7th or whatever. And if I knew that Freiermuth was going to fall to the end of the damn draft, that's such a good pick.
I'm a big dummy. I got lost in the
conversation.
Exactly. So now I'm going to have to figure out a kicker here.
I just took the guy from Mississippi State, Chase Christman. So
all right, you expect he's gonna Gonna have a lot of opportunities, huh?
That's right. Look, I'll just take the I'll just take all of the extra points from Mississippi State. So that's fine.
Okay, so who's gonna take my Kent State kicker here?
No one.
Somebody gonna take him?
Oh, wait a minute. Well, you're out of picks though. Did you not take a kicker?
Oh, I did.
Because your draft is done.
Oh, my bad. Oops. Sorry, John.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm sure he'll get over it. It's not that big a deal. Let's see. Spencer Brown, Penn State.
Oh, he was gone anyway. Trickett.
Oh, Trickett. Was he really? That's funny.
He's one of the best kickers in the country.
Getting sniped on kickers. Unbelievable.
And they're gonna score a lot. You expect if you're a Dustin Crum believer, you're gonna expect Kent to put up a lot of points.
Kevin Brown took Kevin Mensa with his last pick. And then Riley Patterson, Bainbridge up for the very last pick here. Taj here. I can't believe this only took 45 minutes. That's unbelievable. 16 rounds in 45 minutes. I love it. So read off your team there, Nick.
All right. Yeah, let's talk a little about this. I just apologized to John for getting flummoxed and forgetting to take a kicker. But so my first overall pick was Rashad Bateman at number 11, who is pretty high on my list. He's my third wide receiver, so I feel pretty good about that. Then I got Sage Surratt in the 14th overall pick. He's my fourth receiver, so feel very good about that. At 3, I took KJ Costello, maybe a little higher than most, but I thought it was good value. Wan'Dale Robinson in the 4th round might be a reach for some, but decent.
I like it.
I like it. I think he's got an opportunity to get the ball in his hands in a variety of ways, and his receiving value should go up with now that we know Spielman is most likely not coming back. Brendan Knox, running back out of Marshall, was my top running back in the 5th round, and then I got Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana, who I'm pretty high on at number 62 overall in the 6th round. My 7th selection was Stevie Scott from Indiana, who I think higher on than most. In the 8th, I got Puka Williams from Kansas, and in the 9th, Gage Walker from Western Kentucky. Run of running backs there. Number 10, I went with somebody I'm way, way, way higher on than pretty much anybody I've seen. Wanted to give a little bit of a highlight to Kalen Geiger from Troy, who I think is the best receiver in the Sun Belt coming into this year. In the 11th round, I went with my second quarterback, Zach Thomas from Appalachian State. He's a top 25 quarterback according to my rankings, and I feel like for some reason he's dropping a bit in these early mocks and ADP and whatnot. In the 12th round, Grant Grinnell from Arizona, we talked about just briefly. Somebody beat me to Jaden DeLoria from Washington State, the true freshman, but I picked Cameron Cooper, who I do think is a slight favorite to win that job over DeLora. I'm not sure that DeLora doesn't beat him out eventually, but if Cooper can hold it down, if that Washington State offense is anything like the Hawaii offense we've seen the last 2 years, I think Cooper's got a great shot to be a top 10 CFF quarterback this year. So feel like that's good value. In the 13th round, I went with the touchdown machine from Illinois when he's healthy, Josh Imortabebe. And then the
9
15th
touchdowns
round,
on 33 catches. By the way.
yeah.
I mean, that is just so unbelievable.
And then in the 15th round, my I made other mistakes, but leaving Pat Freiermuth to draft Jalen Weidermeyer at 179 overall. I really like Weidermeyer, by the way. But
yeah, he's a good pick, but Freiermuth is top.
But Freiermuth is better, and I should have known better on that. So that was my last pick. I forgot to pick a kicker, but feel decent about it. How about you?
Give yourself a grade. Give yourself a grade on it.
I'm mad that I screwed up the tight end position. Oh, I took the Texas A&M defense, by the way, which if you're a CFB Winning Edge Patreon supporter, you'll see that Texas A&M has a talent edge defensively in, I believe, 11 of 12 games.
Well,
So
and also week 1 they play Abilene Christian, so
that's a decent matchup.
That's a pretty good matchup. Yeah.
The schedule is much different for Texas A&M this year, but yeah. So I feel like it's a B.
B.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got some good value. I'm pleased that I got Cooper in the 13th round, even though I do like DeLora a little bit better. I feel like Cooper, at least because spring was, shut down.
Right.
I feel like he has an edge just in age, experience. He's been on campus. It's definitely a different system, of course, but I feel that we should pencil him in right now as number 1. Maybe I screwed up. Maybe DeLora's not in the system because I think Mike Bainbridge has him as his number 1 Washington State quarterback, and he did not draft him. So maybe I just
it might be that he's not in the system yet.
He might not.
That could definitely have happened. They haven't cleared out the old guys yet, which made it a little more difficult, but it's only took 45 minutes with all the industry people. And so, I like your team a lot. What I do notice is you like to take your risk, I feel like, at quarterback and not at the other positions. Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson is a little bit risky or whatever for where you picked him. I don't think he really is at all. I think he's an absolute
I love him.
stud.
I mean, and this is something that when Mike and I were going back and forth on Friday, he put it really well that a lot of the guys that I like are better football players than they are CFF players.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to my commentary and my insight, that's definitely something I need to address. Is I fall in love with guys as football players, and I need to pay a little bit closer attention sometimes to their actual CFF value. So maybe that's an issue with me picking Wan'Dale Robinson this high, but
I don't think it is.
I think he's got a chance to lead Nebraska in receptions because he's going to be working out of the slot. He's going to be on shorter passes. He can take any of those passes the distance. He's going to get handoffs. He's going to get reverses. He's a return man. So as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to get the ball a lot. I mean, I don't know if he's going to get it like we saw Rondale Moore a couple of years ago. That's who I compared him to coming into last year. And that was ambitious, but also he was a little bit banged up. So I think he could be that. If Omar Manning steps up and really is a big-time number 1 target, that'll lead into it a little bit. But I think that they love Robinson. I think Scott Frost loves him, wants to get him the ball as much as possible. So I feel pretty good. Yeah.
So what do you think about you take your risk at quarterbacks versus other position? Because KJ Costello, I know you've ranked high, but we haven't seen him with Leach yet. He transferred there. This is his last year of eligibility. He's the starter. We know that. So, and I know he would have gone, but he's a little bit of a risk. But you paired him with just the highest of floors and a guy like Zach Thomas. I mean, just, he's probably going to do exactly what I did last year, which is, a shade over, in the low 20s, 23.5 points last year, pretty much per game, 28 touchdowns. He runs a little bit too. He rushes, and he may be in for more rushing touchdowns with Darrington Evans gone. So I like the pairing, but then you took, Cooper with the thought process of wanting to take DeLora, and then Grant Gunnell you took from U of A, who, I think that if you hadn't taken Gunnell, he probably would have been undrafted. I could be wrong about that, but I thought I was high on him where I put him in my rankings, and I don't even know where that is. I remember moving him up here going, I don't know if anybody else is going to buy this. So I can look real quick.
So he's 39th for me, which, there were guys that I didn't draft that I have ranked higher. One of those is Jack Abraham from Southern Miss. I think I'm the only guy in the world that's got him in my top 35, but I look at it where we had 2 Southern Miss players drafted in this draft of experts, which is a pretty small league and a pretty quick draft. I mean, 12 teams. And how many rounds did we do? 16, 17, something like that. And that included a kicker. So if you've got 2 guys, and we've said a couple of times in the show already, you've got somebody's got to catch the ball for some of these quarterbacks, right? And,
Yeah.
and then this is sort of the opposite situation where you've got these receivers, somebody's got to throw them the ball. And Jack Abraham is that guy. He has struggled with turnovers, but he's a senior. He's made 22 starts already. Southern Miss opens with South Alabama, plays Louisiana Tech, Jackson State. You'll sit them against Auburn, but then they get into Conference USA play. North Texas, FAU, UTEP, go out of conference to play Liberty.
Yeah.
Rice, Western Kentucky, that's tough. UTSA, UAB, that's tough. That's in your championship week anyway. So
Right.
I love the way it sets up. I haven't done my official strength of schedule ratings quite yet. That's going to be in the mix for weakest schedule in the country.
I was getting looking at what I had. I was definitely getting Gunnell and Joyner mixed up. I have Gunnell.
I like Joyner too, and he went undrafted, and that's somebody that we should talk about because you and I were discussing it, I think, off air earlier today. That Joyner is somebody that I put in my. I think he snuck his way all the way to my top 50 actually after I made a mistake and had him listed in like the 300s or something. But if I'm that high on Gunnell, somebody's got to catch the ball. So, you know, the having a number one receiver, Jameer Joyner was a true freshman converted quarterback who became Arizona's number one receiver last year. I have to think he's been on campus. He knows the system better. He knows, you know, being a football player at the collegiate level better. So really the only threat, in my opinion, to become, you know, the number one receiver over him is Booby Curry, who was so disappointing last year. So I feel like Joyner is got great value in you know, late rounds or as a pickup afterward. But especially if I'm high on Gunnell, somebody's got to catch the ball, and I think Joyner's, you know, the top option at this point.
Well, let's bring in this jerk that took Sam Ehlinger in the first round, so I couldn't get him. Joe, welcome into the live stream. Obviously, you can catch Joe's work at the CFF site. He's one of the OGs of the CFF industry. Been here a long time. So tell us about your team and how you liked this mock draft.
I jumped out of the live stream because I told you I had attempted to do it last year and the draft just flew by. I'm sure you already talked about this, but 16 rounds, 44 minutes. I mean, I think I could have held my breath for this draft and still been alive at this time, to be honest with you.
Was it easier not doing it live?
That was quick. Look, the one thing when you do a draft like this, and you know, I'm a fan of the deep drafts, right? There's so much talent still out there that for a league like this, you got to swing big or you go home. That's the way that I look at it. That's why, and you could say that maybe I reached early, but I went up for Keithy, my number one tight end. I got Georgia, the number one defense on my list. Cade York, the number one kicker. I feel that there's so much depth in the draft pool that I just went ahead and went for all the top guys in my draft. And you know what? I was sitting there either at 4 or 5, and I was going to, since it's a 2 quarterback league, I wanted to go ahead and I was going to get Rattler if he was available, but I was expecting Fields and Ehlinger both to be gone. So the fact that Ehlinger was there, I took him and just said, I'll sit back and just wait on quarterbacks for the rest of the draft. I felt like I didn't have to draft a quarterback after that because there's so much depth. I feel a little bit later at the position that no one was really jumping on a lot of guys early. So, man, but there's so much still left on the board right now. It's crazy.
Well, do this. Tell me about Marquez Stevenson in the 3rd round, because I saw him. I went, oh, all right, Joe. I like that pick a lot. I feel like I'm higher on Marquez Stevenson than most people, but I don't think I'm that high. So tell me about Stevenson in the 3rd.
Yeah, so, you know, that was a pick. I was going to take Kobe Lewis right there. Kobe Lewis, I felt dropped all the way down. I think it was Kobe. Where did I take Stevenson in the 2nd round, didn't I?
I think this says
you
got 2nd round.
Oh yeah, you're right. 220. I need glasses, Joe. So
so I was going to take Kobe Lewis, who went 1 pick before me, which I'm high on Kobe Lewis, and so I just felt like that I would just go ahead and get Marquez Stevenson. I just feel that this is going to be a little bit back to the throwback of receivers under Holgerson. I believe that, Houston, let's be honest, was a dumpster fire last year. There was a lot of things going on with the program. Guys just didn't want to be there. Let's just hope that they've gotten all that taken care of and everything's going to the wrinkles are going to be ironed out. I really see that passing game and Clayton Tune leaning on Marquez Stevenson this year. They won't have Derek King, who's down at Miami now. So Tune won't be as mobile as someone like King would have been. I think that's going to create a lot of opportunities for Stevenson. Really high on him this year at Houston.
Now, so what you basically described, I've been calling it in because I do, baseball mocks and NFL mocks and stuff like that too. But because of the shortened or potential shortened baseball season, people have been drafting what I call Ricky Bobby teams, which it's if you ain't first, you're last. And it doesn't matter because the season's so short. So I feel like that you went a little bit like that by taking Mac Jones and some of these other guys, Trey Sermon going into a new situation. Yeah. People have been debating which Oklahoma wide receiver should go first. You took Weiss. So tell me a little bit about some of those guys in particular.
Well, Sermon I'm really high on because I don't think that Ohio State goes out and gets and recruits Sermon if there was any thought that Teague was going to be back anytime soon. There is not much proven depth behind Teague. And let's be honest, when you're talking college fantasy football, you're really racing to get out of the gate fast, right? You can't win it unless you actually get into in redraft head-to-head leagues. You can't win the league unless you get into the postseason. So if you're one of those guys that traditionally drafts some group of 5 players in full FBS formats, you've got to have enough depth on your roster to carry you through the non-conference part and get into the conference part of your schedule. Sometimes that really hurts guys. And I'll throw out, for example, an Isaiah McCoy this year and Dustin Crum over at Kent State, right? I really love those 2 guys. But if I were to rank them too high and all of a sudden 3 of their first 4 games, I believe, are at Kentucky, at Alabama, and I'm drawing a blank on another one, but there's
another tough
maybe
one.
Penn State. Yeah. But I think they play 3 tough road games in the first 4 weeks. They play Kennesaw State in between those 3 games, which means that there should be some backups playing. You're really not going to get, and I took Isaiah McCoy in this rep, you're really not going to get the benefit from them until midway through the season. I think Sermon's one of those guys that could pay off in the beginning of the year. I actually had Kennedy Brooks in my queue as well with Ramondre Stevenson's supposedly.
I even had him, and I'm a Texas
I could have gone Brooks or Sermon right there. So that's why I went ahead and went with Sermon, because I like the upside in that Ohio State offense to start off the year really fast.
Mac Jones, the Mac Jones pick. Are you convinced he's the starter, or is that look, Bryce Young didn't get a chance to go practice too much in the off season. They're not even back at facilities yet. A lot of these kids, well, maybe Bryce Young is, but not everyone is. So is that just a factor of Bryce Young is a freshman, but Mac Jones is the incumbent?
Here's what I'll tell you. I've participated with a group of guys in 2 best ball drafts so far. We did one in May. We did one in June. Actually, I think we did it in April and May. We're going to do, we did one in June. We're going to have one July, August.
Animals.
We're going to do several of them.
Yeah,
right?
animals.
We're going to see how players move up and down the board. The last 2 drafts that we did, Mac Jones, I think the earliest he might have gone was like the 16th round. So no one's really moving on Mac Jones, right? Yeah. Of course, you've got Bryce Young there. Now, with what we saw from Mac Jones at the end of last year, you have to really like his potential for 2020. But here's something that you need to think about, and something that everybody needs to think about. And I've talked about this on one of the shows that I did just a couple of weeks ago. With the cancellation of spring practice, I don't think we're going to see as many true freshmen starting off the year or really getting that head start that they had in years past. And I think that's advantaged Mac Jones in this format. So in a 16-round format that we start 2 quarterbacks, I had Sam Ehlinger already. So I'm thinking, you know what? My second quarterback, I'm going to go ahead and get Mac Jones. I don't know, maybe it was 9, 10 rounds, 11 rounds into it. And with the assumption that I think Mac Jones is going to open up as the starter. If he starts off hot, I think he's going to sort of be cemented in that role as the starter. Now, I do think we're going to see Bryce Young. I think he's going to play, whether or not, he gets in there in some wildcat formations, maybe the way that Hurts was was used in when he first came there at Alabama. I think they get him on the field, but for the most part, I think you're going to see Mac Jones. The advantage is in, the ball's in his court to start the year. And so that's why I went Mac Jones, because this was the type of question I was expecting, because so many people have stayed away from Mac Jones. We've made jokes that, did Mac Jones suddenly fall off the face of the earth because no one was really touching him? And I actually like him more in best ball formats, because you can go ahead and get the handcuff Bryce Young in the best ball format. But where he's drafted, where he's getting drafted right now, I think Mac Jones might be a little undervalued right now, because this is something that we have to keep in mind too.
How deep are those best balls, Joe?
We go 26 rounds.
26. Okay.
We go 26 rounds. Really expanded rosters. Yeah, 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs. I think we go 4 receivers, 2
How
flex.
many teams?
It's a really deep league.
How many teams?
We did 12.
12. Okay.
12 teams, 26-man rosters. But here's something, and I'm going to talk about this on my show coming up next week. The one thing that we have to realize that in years past, and let's talk about Mac Jones. Let's look at the SEC West in particular, or just SEC in general, right? In years past, we've sort of stayed away from guys in the SEC sometimes because it's a grinded out, heavy defense conference. Look what we've seen over the last 2 years. Alabama, offensive. LSU last year, historic offensive year. Auburn brings in Chad Morris to run the offense this year. You've got Lane Kiffin and now Mike Leach in the SEC West now. This isn't the SEC West from 3 or 4 years ago. It's a new day in the SEC West, in the SEC in general, and we have to keep that in mind for fantasy football this year.
Yeah, it's turning into Pac-12. I love it. Go ahead, Nick.
I agree with you. I think that Mac Jones in the 11th round was excellent value. According to my metrics, Alabama had the second best offense in the country last year, and if in any other year would have been number 1. Basically, LSU is just on another planet. I agree with your point about guys, because of the cancellation of spring practice, in sort of established systems. But I've been sort of working a idea in my mind where I'm starting to think, and Hawaii, or former Hawaii head coach Nick Rolovich, and his move to Washington State's been on my mind a lot recently. I think there might be a chance that while guys who, same system, same head coach, and specifically same offensive coordinator, guys have a pretty big edge now if they've been on campus ahead of time. But I think that in a situation like maybe Washington State or some others out there, guys that are moving into a new situation, either as a true freshman or a junior college player, but true freshman more so, it is just on my mind. In a new system with a first-time head coach, I think those guys might actually have a chance to surprise and win some of those jobs, because new head coach is going to look around, doesn't really have a ton of background information, and say, you know what, that guy over there, he's a true freshman, he's young, but he's the most talented guy. He's going to play. And so I've been getting higher and higher on Jaden DeLora at Washington State for a variety of reasons, one of which he played in the run and shoot in high school in Hawaii, was recruited by Rolovich, and, all that. So, but I think that, that situation in particular, but there are others around the country, once they open up shop in fall camp and the coaching staff is looking around and they're going to say, you know what, that true freshman, hasn't played a lot of football, but we can tell that he's the most talented guy. So let's go with that guy. I just feel like there are some situations, maybe it's few and far between, but there are going to be some situations where true freshmen are going to get opportunities earlier than maybe in past years because of the lack of spring practice.
Well, I think it's a great point, because I am with you in believing that head coaches that are starting over at a new program have a longer leash, right? So Rolovich is just rolling into Washington State. He's not
right.
Even though every year you can argue that every coach is playing or coaching for their job, he's got a longer leash this year. He's coming in, new program. He has, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. But the one thing that I always and this is something that I always warn people about with college fantasy football, and it's the big difference between, pro and college, because there's so much attrition. with players, you really have to sometimes go off of the tendencies of the programs and the coaches leading the programs. And the only reason why I'm hesitant to jump on a Washington State quarterback with what we know right now, Nick, is quite frankly, is I saw what Rolovich did last year with Cordero and with the two quarterbacks last year with McDonald and Cordero. Whereas if one threw a couple of picks early, they got a short leash. So will that happen at Washington State this year? Maybe. I don't see why it wouldn't. He's got three guys right now that possibly could be, battling for playing time. Washington State could be one of those programs where maybe we see some type of a quarterback derby for 2 or 3 weeks before we even figure out who their starter is.
As long as they're throwing it to Tay Martin. That's all I got Tay Martin in
Bernard Bell for me.
Yeah,
but
Bell.
So that's just the one that's been on my mind more recently. I've watched a lot of Hawaii football in the last few years and whatever, but I just feel like that might happen more often this year than others. It's pure speculation. It's pure gut feel on my part, which I don't normally, normally I'm more of a numbers guy, but I think there are maybe some other situations where, especially with a new staff, maybe some of these true freshman guys are going to get a little bit more of a longer look than they might earlier, where all things being equal, maybe you would go with a senior or what have you.
Well, the other thing we have to keep in mind too, and this is something to think about. And I think it's really going to depend which program we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that may be because I've said this all along as well. We may see a lot of true freshmen come in, and because of the 4-game rule, a lot of these Power 5 programs, the soft part of their schedule is in the first 3 or 4 weeks. Are these freshmen going to be ready then? And then the coaches have to make a decision. Are they ready to kind of get in there in weeks 1, week 2, or week 3? Because we can't really do too much. It's going to be hard for Alabama to throw in some of those true freshmen in there in week 9, 10, and 11 when they're playing for a national championship. So I think the late start, depending on how fast things move through preseason camp, will really depend on how we see the true freshmen rolling out. And a lot of the times it's going to really just going to depend on how fast they can grasp the concepts, particularly on offense. In our case,
I don't think we can say that Saban has any fear to throw in a true freshman at any point, knowing that he did it in the second half of a natty, with Tua coming in, of course. But I understand the point. And I think obviously, freshmen not at quarterback, at running back and wide receiver, can make a bigger impact sooner than most quarterbacks.
But this is why I argue for Mac Jones at that spot, because for your if I can get a quarterback 2 in the 9th, 10th round with potential to give me 40 touchdowns, that's what I want in this draft. I'm not looking to draft a guy that's going to throw for 20 touchdowns, maybe run for 6 or 7 as my quarterback 2. I'm going to take a guy that I think has potential to give me 35 plus touchdowns in the 9th or 10th round as a starting quarterback.
I'm with it. So I want to ask you 2 more questions here. Number one, you said you got your number 1 tight end on your board, and tight end seems to be a bit contentious. Why can I not think of the kid's name from SMU? Grantham. Granson. So him, Kyle Pitts, and you have how do you say it? Keith?
Brant
Keithy. Okay. So from Utah. So explain to me Brant Keithy as your number 1 tight end.
Well, you have to realize that Zach Moss is no longer in Utah, right? So we know that the offensive coordinator there has a habit of riding his running backs. Now, there's a running back battle going on in Utah as well, right? So we got Jordan Wilmore, and you've got Devin Brumfield. So we don't really know exactly right now who is going to – no one's really earned that running back 1 spot. Yes. But if you think back to last year, Keithy was kind of doing some things in that offense out of the backfield as well. The reason why I like him as my tight end 1 this year is not only they're going – possibly Jake Bentley starts at quarterback this year, the transfer from South Carolina. We don't know yet. So, but there's not a lot of options at receiver right now, proven options at Utah right now, at least not big targets. So I think Keithy has an advantage 1 in the passing game. The other thing is that if Zach Moss has moved on, there's no proven running back 1 right now. who's to say Keithy's not going to get a few more touches this year in the backfield? And so I really like, even though we don't know for sure, I really like the possible potential that he could have in the red zone next year in that Utah offense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially he gets those goal line carries. Like
you never know. That's
who
right.
was that? Who's the kid from Minnesota that did that? He scored like 8 or
Seth
9.
Green.
Yeah, Green. He scored like 8
Virginia
or 9
Tech's
rushing
got one
touchdowns.
too.
Yeah. It's always one or two guys. I think Boise State did it a couple of years ago as well. So give yourself a grade on this mock, like a letter grade. What do you think you did? You can add plus or minuses, however you want to do it.
For myself?
Yes.
Oh, man. I don't know. I'm always hard on myself. I always think that there's 6 or 7 guys I should have taken. So for me, it's just an average draft. I'll give myself a B- on that. But, I went with some guys that I really like. I have jumped on Destin Coates, the running back from Georgia State, in 2 drafts. TJ McDaniel over there at SMU, who I think is going to take over at running back in that SMU offense. So I'm kind of staying on track with the guys that I have kind of backed all preseason long. I said, we talked a little bit before the show started about how I like to kind of go off the map a little bit and kind of help put guys on the fantasy radar. I think I did that a little bit. Spencer Brown is another guy I took with my last pick. I actually had Jalen Bester, Miami of Ohio, ranked a little bit higher than him, but I took Spencer Brown for a piece that I'm going to be doing coming up on the next show. And
is
so
this Spencer Brown?
my thought was to put my mouth, put the actions where my mouth was, and I'm going to have and share some thoughts on Spencer Brown and that UAB offense on the show that I've got coming up. But for me, average draft.
Is this the 7th year? Like, I feel like Spencer Brown has been in college football like since I started in 2014. It's ridiculous. Like, the dude's been around forever, I feel like, right?
I'm going to be sharing a piece on a show coming up in the next week about Spencer Brown. When you look at his 17 and 18 season, remember last year was injury riddled, so he really kind of fell off the radar. When you take a look at his 17 and 18 season and think that UAB, if he's healthy this year, with UAB returning 4 starters on that offensive line, I think UAB actually could possibly win that conference this year. And you look at some of the other running backs that I'm going to kind of highlight compared to Spencer Brown, guys that particularly run the ball, run the rock a lot, and don't participate in the passing game. If you told me you can give me, at a flex spot, Spencer Brown, 1,000+ yards and double-digit touchdowns as a flex option every week, I'm taking a guy like that. So for me, that's why I jumped on him in the 16th round, and I'll have more on him coming up in a show in another week or two.
All right,
look at the schedule. New Mexico State, Alabama A&M. They play Miami, but then South Alabama and then Conference USA.
Yeah, I really like UAB. I really like UAB defense too. I think for you guys in full FBS formats looking to get a sneaky defense late, I know a popular choices is always in the group of 5, maybe to go with a Boise State or go with an Appalachian State. Don't sleep on UAB defense this year.
Yeah, UAB, a strong defense. So here's my team. I'm gonna go through it here, and then I'm gonna put you guys on the spot and tell me the pick that you hated the most on my team. So my quarterbacks, I got De'Ara King and Adrian Martinez. Starting running backs, Max Borghi, Mo Ibrahim, and Jarian Ely. My wide receivers, Jamar Chase, Warren Jackson, Khalil Pimpleton. On the bench, I've got John Reese Plumlee and Chris Reynolds as backup QBs, Deshaun Corbin and CJ Verdell as backup RBs, and Sky Moore as my backup wide receiver. And then my kicker and defense, I took the kid from Mississippi State, Chase Christman, and of course, Texas playing South Florida week 1. I like that matchup. So we'll start with you, Nick. Take a look at my team. I like my team. I really like the way that it kind of fell, but I think Joe had a great point when, it seems shallow. And I think to me specifically, it seems shallow because I just ranked 1,000 guys this weekend. So I was like, oh, let's get a little deeper. I want some of these later guys here. But which pick did I take that you're like, little high? Maybe you don't hate it, but you're like, I wouldn't have taken this guy here. I feel like I know who it is for you. But I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I think for me, and it's come up in a couple of times that we've talked before, I'm nervous as to what Max Borghi is going to be at Washington State this year, because we've seen 2 different offenses basically from Nick Rolovich in the last 3 years. 3 years ago, we saw a pistol-based offense that did, give running backs a pretty heavy workload. Also threw to the running backs a little bit. And then the last 2 years, Rolovich went back to his roots, more of a traditional run and shoot, rolled in some RPOs to change things up a little bit. But really, the running game from the running back position was limited at best. And running backs did not get involved in the passing game at all. And so, I know that he's a smart guy. I know that he knows how good Max Borghi is. So I tend to think that he's going to maybe trend a little bit more to what we saw in 2017 and really does build an offense around Max Borghi. But then I'm just the tiniest bit nervous that, the last 2 years he's sort of gotten in a rhythm, and he did hand over play calling duties last year as well to a longtime assistant who's also a run and shoot guy. So I'm a little bit nervous that you go in and you have a plan. Okay, we're going to feed Max Borghi as much as possible, and then things start to shift a little bit, and maybe he gets lost in the shuffle. I don't necessarily expect that to happen, but that's my worry. So Borghi, I think you picked just a little higher maybe than I would. You and I look similarly on some of these guys that are controversial is not necessarily the right word, but some guys that, there are
coaching staff. Yeah.
There are opinions about Derek King, Adrian Martinez, Warren Jackson. You and I think are higher on those guys than most. And that's pretty well documented. I love Kyle Pitts, my number 1 tight end, but I think if there's any pick that I'm just the littlest bit nervous about, it's probably going to work out fine, but I'm just a tiny bit nervous about Max Borghi.
Joe, what do you think?
So I'll go on the record by saying this, man. I've got Adrian Martinez right now ranked. We have him ranked number 11. I think this is a bounce back year for Adrian Martinez. Yeah. I've said it on some earlier shows. I like the Nebraska schedule in the first half of the year. It gets a little daunting in the second half. But like I said, I think the first half, I think Martinez gets out fast. I really like that pick. The one pick on your roster and the one name that I'm really having a tough time with is Jerrion Ealy over at Ole Miss. That's the one I'm not sure about. When I say that the SEC is not the SEC from 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm still worried about his utilization given his size. The defenders in the SEC aren't getting any smaller. So even though the offenses are opening up, still got to go against some of those bigger defenders. And so the question is will he be used more as a hybrid runner receiver or used exclusively as a running back? And I think ultimately that's going to really determine the value of a player like Jerrion Ealy. Will he get used more like an Otis Anderson over there at Central Florida, or, will he be used more as a runner? And ultimately, I think that's going to determine the factor of Jerrion Ealy. The talent is there. I'm just a little nervous about him from a consistent college fantasy football standpoint.
So I felt like I got sniped on him. Not really. I mean, I did have Puka Williams ahead of him, who Nick took 2 picks ahead of me. But I like Ealy, and the reason I like him is because big-time recruit going to a Lane Kiffin offense now, and Lane Kiffin has produced us some pretty big gainers in CFF, like Devin Singletary. You're absolutely right about the harsher schedule, and when I had Blaze on this pod, he would always mention how he didn't like taking SEC running backs too much. They are super talented, but so are the defenses there. Whereas, you're taking a running back in the Sun Belt who's pretty strong. He's going to have an easier time against those defenders. So I took him in the 8th round. I'm with you. I went back a little back and forth, but I think when we're thinking about Ricky Bobby teams, you ain't first, you're last. 8th round, really, once you get past kind of 5th or 6th, take a lot of upside. Take a lot of upside after that, unless you've done that in your higher spots, and then take maybe a high floor guy. But I'm going all upside.
Scott, this is what I say, and I think this is really important about college fantasy football. And we need to keep you got to keep this in mind. There are players that there's when you look at running back, let's just say numbers 25 through 40. The difference of those guys really isn't that great. And I think
half a point.
This is what makes college fantasy football so enjoyable. The value right there is all similar. You've got 15 players between 25 and 40. You know what you need to do, and I advise every college fantasy football player, fantasy football owner to do this. Take the guys that you like. Take the guys that you want to pull for. Why would you want to take somebody that you don't like? Or if you feel like your gut feeling is that this is the guy with the higher upside, go for those guys. The value between 25 and 40 at running back this year, I don't think is too great. Sure, you're going to have some guys that kind of, surpass their expectations. You're going to have guys that don't perform up the expectations. But for the most part, from a value standpoint, they're all in the same bucket, right? Go for the guys that you're going to enjoy watching on a Saturday afternoon. That's who you want to go with.
And it's a great point to make. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and promote all the stuff that you have going on now and anything that we can purchase right now on the CFF site.
The CFF site, we've been around now for 10 years, and for 7 years now, we have produced a preseason fantasy draft guide. So, maybe you're running a little bit behind in your homework, maybe friends inviting you into a league. It's not the end all be all, but guys, if you need a great starting point, particularly for any of you all in full FBS draft modes, formats, we've been doing the preseason fantasy draft guide for 7 years, 50 plus pages of a PDF printable document. We update it all throughout the spring, all throughout the summer. We've got projections on our site as well. We've got a bunch of exclusive things that you can get as far as memberships if you're an all access, all American access member. Just tons of stuff. And the CFF site, we do the weekly rankings, projections, waiver wire, all your traditional stuff that any fantasy football site does. We've been doing it now for 10 years, but that college fantasy football preseason fantasy draft guide in its 7th year has sort of become a staple within the college fantasy football community. And I appreciate you having me on tonight. And we're going to do this again sometime in the summer.
You got it. Nick, promote away for CFB Winning Edge.
Patreon.com/CFB Winning Edge. We've got over 11,000 individual player ratings, game projections, projected point spreads. We also, of course, have CFF rankings, which have been updated as of today. And you got to see some of those newer ratings in progress during this draft. So check us out. Everything from $5 a month for the CFF stuff, and then $15 a month for tier 2 gets you access to our FBS team profiles with all those player ratings, coach ratings, team performance, more than you could ever want, probably, as far as information goes on players and teams and projections.
Best depth charts anywhere. I love CFB Winning Edge. I love the CFF site. And of course, if you guys will please check out my Patreon, patreon.com/ITLArmy, where I have CFF rankings up today. I have fantasy football rankings, PPR, dynasty, first year player draft rankings. The Welsh has baseball rankings. His top 500 minor league baseball prospects for fantasy are up there, and he will be adding ones after the draft that starts tomorrow. So all those guys that are getting drafted will have fantasy context the next day on his list. So check that out as well, along with the secret shows and the group me rooms and all the other stuff that you guys already know that we offer at inthisleague.com. So check us out. And, you guys got a lot of listening to do, because this is the 4th show of the week that we had. I had the other 2 backlog because I was waiting on the new intro. Recorded one today, and we recorded this today. So lots of catching up to do if you're just getting into CFF for 2020. But go ahead and do it, and we will see you guys next week. Take it easy, everybody.